the Stoic path to wealth and success. In our modern age, the pursuit of wealth has become almost synonymous with the pursuit of life itself. From the moment we wake up, advertisements tell us that more is better. More money, more possessions, more recognition, more success. Society whispers that happiness is only one promotion away, one investment away, one luxury away. Yet countless people who achieve these outward goals still find themselves restless, unsatisfied, and empty when they finally grasp what they thought they wanted. The mansion feels hollow. The applause fades. The bank account grows, but the heart feels poor. It is here that the wisdom of the Stoics emerges like a lighthouse in a storm. These ancient philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, were no strangers to power, politics, or wealth. They lived in the heart of the Roman Empire, surrounded by ambition, luxury, and corruption. Yet they dared to see wealth differently. They did not dismiss it, nor did they worship it. Instead, they sought to understand it, to strip it of illusion and reveal its true purpose. For the Stoics, wealth was never the ultimate goal, but a tool, neutral in itself, given meaning only by the way it was used. The Stoics taught that success was not measured by gold, titles, or applause, but by the quality of one's character. A man may hold riches beyond imagination, yet if he is enslaved by greed, jealousy, or fear, he is still poor in the ways that matter most. Conversely, a man with little, but who carries himself with wisdom, discipline, and inner peace, is rich beyond measure. This is why Seneca, himself one of Rome's wealthiest men, could write, "Wealth is the slave of a wise man, the master of a fool." This perspective does not deny ambition. The Stoic path is not about abandoning effort or rejecting success. Rather, it is about mastering the self before mastering the world. For what use is wealth to a man who cannot control his desires? What use is success to a leader who cannot control his anger? The Stoics believed that prosperity built on self-mastery is the only prosperity that lasts. Without virtue, success collapses under its own weight. And so, the Stoic path to wealth and success is a path of balance. It reminds us that ambition without wisdom leads to ruin, but wisdom without action leads to stagnation. Wealth in the hands of the disciplined can become a force for good, a source of growth, and a foundation for legacy. But wealth in the hands of the undisciplined becomes a chain, binding its owner in endless dissatisfaction. The Stoics call us to look beyond the surface, to measure success not only by what we gain, but by who we become in the process. They invite us to see wealth not as a finish line, but as a tool to practice virtue. They remind us that true prosperity is not found in possessions, but in peace of mind, not in applause, but in alignment with our higher nature. This is the wisdom that echoes across centuries, from the marble halls of Rome to the restless hearts of our modern age. The Stoic path does not promise quick riches or overnight triumph. Instead, it reveals something far more valuable: the way to build lasting prosperity. Prosperity of both the soul and the world around you. Wealth is a tool, not the goal. To the Stoics, wealth was never a villain to be feared, nor a god to be worshipped. They stripped away the illusions surrounding it and saw it clearly for what it truly was: a tool. Like a sword in the hand of a warrior or a chisel in the hand of a sculptor, wealth itself is neutral. It carries no moral weight on its own. What gives it meaning, whether for good or for destruction, is the hand that wields it and the character of the one who possesses it. Seneca, who knew the corridors of Roman wealth better than most, often reminded his students that riches themselves cannot corrupt a man. It is only the untrained mind that turns gold into poison. He once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Here lies the Stoic insight. Wealth in itself is harmless, but the endless hunger for it enslaves. The man who believes money is the measure of his worth is already impoverished, no matter how heavy his purse. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the vast Roman Empire, lived in palaces surrounded by marble, silk, and gold. Yet, in his private writings, he reminded himself daily not to mistake these trappings for true fortune. He called wealth a loan from fortune, something that could be taken back at any moment. His task, he believed, was not to be owned by wealth, but to use it justly, to provide, to govern, to serve. Wealth to him was never the goal of life, but a responsibility entrusted to him by fate. This view is timeless. Even in today's world, we can see the truth of their wisdom. Money can build hospitals, schools, and opportunities for generations, or it can feed greed, corruption, and vanity. It can liberate a family from hardship, or it can enslave a soul to endless desire. Like fire, it can warm or consume. Like a ship, it can carry you across oceans or sink you beneath them, depending on how you steer it. The Stoics warn us of a dangerous illusion, that possessions alone can make us happy. They saw with piercing clarity that happiness tied to wealth is fragile, for wealth can vanish overnight. Empires fall, markets collapse, fortune shifts without warning. If your peace of mind rests on what can be taken away, then you do not possess wealth, it possesses you. The wise man, however, relates to wealth as a servant, not a master. He enjoys its benefits without chaining his soul to it. He can use it to create stability, to give generously, to live comfortably, but he also trains himself to let it go without despair if fate demands it. This freedom is the hallmark of the Stoic path. So, wealth is not the finish line, not the ultimate prize at the end of life's race. It is a tool we carry along the way, no more significant than the virtue with which we use it. The true danger lies in mistaking the tool for the goal, living as though money itself were the proof of value, or as though riches alone could define a man's success. The Stoics teach us that the highest form of wealth is not found in gold, but in mastery of the self. For when you govern your desires, wealth serves you. When you fail to govern them, wealth enslaves you. The question then is not whether you hold wealth, but whether you are strong enough to hold it lightly. Only then does fortune cease to be a tyrant and become what it was always meant to be, a servant to a life well lived. Master desire, master wealth Epictetus, once a slave who rose to become one of the greatest Stoic teachers, offered a truth that pierces through centuries of human struggle. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. These words carry a wisdom that the modern world desperately needs, for never before in history has mankind been surrounded by so much abundance and yet felt so much lack. The Stoics saw desire as the root of both freedom and slavery. To be ruled by endless wants is to be forever poor, no matter how much you accumulate. Every new possession births another craving. Every achievement opens the hunger for the next. The man who defines wealth by what he owns lives in a prison without walls, always chasing, never arriving. He drinks from the sea of desire, but the more he consumes, the thirstier he becomes. Epictetus himself knew the weight of poverty. Born into bondage, he owned nothing, not even his freedom. Yet, he discovered a truth greater than gold, that the man who masters desire cannot be made poor, even if stripped of everything. The chains on his body did not bind his mind. By needing little, he possessed much. By disciplining his wants, he discovered a wealth untouchable by fate, misfortune, or tyrant. The Stoics did not deny human needs. Food, shelter, security. These are natural desires. But beyond these essentials, the endless craving for luxury, status, and comparison becomes the enemy of peace. Seneca warned that luxury feeds restlessness, not satisfaction. The more silk a man wears, the more he fears rags. The higher his palace rises, the more he trembles at the thought of falling. Desire, unchecked, becomes a chain heavier than iron. In our time, This truth shines brighter than ever. We are surrounded by advertisements designed to awaken desire, promises of happiness through possessions, beauty through purchases, success through status symbols. Yet the Stoics remind us that no amount of external gain can fill the emptiness of an undisciplined soul. True wealth begins not by adding more, but by wanting less. A man who can walk past luxury without envy, who can enjoy simplicity without shame, who can be content with enough, that man is free. But make no mistake, mastering desire is not the same as rejecting ambition. The Stoics were not ascetics retreating from life. They ruled empires, built legacies, and engaged with the world. Their power came not from refusing desire, but from governing it. To desire wisdom, to desire virtue, to desire growth. These are the noble fires that ignite greatness. What they warned against was the uncontrolled hunger for pleasure and possessions, for these consume a man from within. So, the path is clear. If you would master wealth, first master desire. Train your mind to distinguish between needs and illusions, between what nourishes the soul and what enslaves it. Practice gratitude for what is already in your hands, rather than despair over what lies beyond your reach. For the man who is content with little cannot be shaken, but the man who craves endlessly is forever at the mercy of fortune. To reduce desire is not to lose wealth, it is to multiply it. For what is wealth if not freedom? And what is freedom if not the ability to say, I have enough? The Stoics knew that the richest man is not the one who owns the most, but the one who needs the least. And in that mastery, he holds a treasure that no thief, no market, and no empire can ever take away. Success, without self-mastery, is fragile. A man may rise in business, politics, or status. He may climb to the highest offices, command vast fortunes, or stand in the glow of applause. Yet if he has not mastered himself, if he cannot govern his own thoughts, emotions, and impulses, his success is built on sand. The world may admire him for a season, but sooner or later, the cracks will appear, and his empire will collapse under the weight of his inner weakness. The Stoics understood that external victories mean little without inner strength. They saw clearly that a man who cannot control his anger will destroy his friendships and alliances. A leader who cannot control his greed will betray his people. A ruler who cannot master his fear will be enslaved by paranoia, no matter how grand the throne, no matter how vast the wealth. The man who lacks self-mastery is always in danger of being toppled, not by others, but by himself. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." These words ring true across centuries. Freedom is not granted by wealth, rank, or power. It is born in the discipline of the soul. The man who depends on applause is enslaved by the crowd. The man who depends on riches is enslaved by fortune. The man who depends on pleasures is enslaved by his own cravings. True success, the Stoics taught, is not freedom to indulge, but freedom from being ruled by what is outside of your control. History offers countless examples. Emperors, kings, and leaders rose to dazzling heights, only to fall because they lacked the strength to rule themselves. Their names are remembered not for their achievements, but for their downfall, brought about not by enemies, but by their own unchecked impulses. By contrast, Marcus Aurelius, though burdened with unimaginable power as Emperor of Rome, strove each day to keep himself humble, disciplined, and aligned with virtue. His private writings show a man reminding himself constantly, power means nothing if it corrupts the soul. In our modern world, the lesson is no less urgent. Many chase wealth, titles, or influence, believing these will secure happiness. Yet how many successful men live tormented lives, restless, addicted, fearful, or angry? Their achievements dazzle the eye, but behind closed doors they are consumed by battles within themselves. Their castles may stand tall, but the foundation is crumbling. Without mastery of the self, even the strongest structure eventually falls. The Stoics invite us to build success on rock, not sand. They call us to discipline our thoughts, to regulate our emotions, and to direct our actions with wisdom. They remind us that self-mastery is not the enemy of ambition, but its protector. With it, success becomes steady, sustainable, and meaningful. Without it, success becomes fragile, short-lived, and destructive. So the question is not simply, what will you achieve? But rather, who will you be when you achieve it? For only the man who governs himself can be trusted to govern wealth, power, or responsibility. The Stoics knew this truth well. The greatest empire a man can rule is not the land beneath his feet, but the kingdom of his own mind. And without that rule, every other success is destined to collapse like sand beneath the tide. Obstacles become opportunities. Marcus Aurelius, philosopher and emperor, once wrote words that have echoed across the centuries. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. At first, this seems like a paradox. How can an obstacle, something that blocks us, also serve as the very path forward? Yet in this simple insight lies one of the deepest truths of Stoic philosophy: that every setback, every barrier, every disappointment can be transformed into the raw material for growth. The Stoics taught that life will never unfold without resistance. Fortune rises and falls, plans collapse, friends betray, health fades, markets crash. And yet, the one who practices Stoic wisdom does not curse these moments as misfortunes. Instead, he sees in them the very opportunities to practice strength, patience, creativity, and resilience. What others call failure, the Stoic calls training. Consider a fire. Throw wood upon it, and it burns brighter. In the same way, obstacles feed the fire of the Stoic spirit. Each difficulty is not an enemy, but fuel for the flame of virtue. A loss becomes a lesson in detachment. An insult becomes a test of patience. A failure becomes an exercise in perseverance. The obstacle is no longer a wall. It is a doorway into deeper strength. Marcus Aurelius ruled in one of Rome's most turbulent times. Plague swept the empire, wars raged on its borders, and betrayal lurked within his own court. Yet, instead of despairing, he trained his mind to view these crises as part of the path. He wrote in his private journal, not to complain, but to remind himself that difficulty itself was a teacher. He understood that if life only handed us ease, we would remain weak, untested, and unprepared. It is adversity that shapes greatness. This perspective remains just as powerful today. In our modern world, people often see setbacks as proof of failure. A lost job, a failed investment, a broken relationship. These can feel like endings. But the Stoic sees them as beginnings, as opportunities to build resilience and reframe destiny. The failed business becomes the foundation of wisdom for the next venture. The betrayal by a friend becomes the chance to cultivate forgiveness and self-reliance. Even illness, though painful, can become the ground on which courage is forged. The Stoics did not romanticize suffering. They did not seek pain for its own sake, but they refused to waste it when it arrived. To them, fortune is never guaranteed, but virtue can always be practiced. And so when an obstacle appeared, they asked not, "Why me?" but rather, "How can I use this?" This mindset is revolutionary. Imagine if instead of being crushed by difficulties, you used them as stepping stones. Imagine if every rejection fueled your determination, if every failure sharpened your wisdom, if every obstacle became part of your progress. The world would no longer be against you. It would be working for you, shaping you into something greater. In truth, the Stoic path is not about avoiding obstacles, but about embracing them as inevitable companions on the journey. Each one carries within it the seed of transformation. And when you train your mind to see this, you discover a profound freedom. No obstacle can truly stop you, because every obstacle can be turned into the way forward. Fortune is temporary. Character is permanent money. Titles, applause. These glitter brightly in the moment, but like smoke, they fade into the air and vanish with time. What is celebrated today is forgotten tomorrow. Wealth changes hands, crowns fall from heads, and the cheers of the crowd grow silent. The Stoics saw this with unflinching clarity. Fortune is a guest who never stays, a companion who can abandon you without warning. To build your sense of worth on riches or recognition is to anchor your life to the shifting sands of chance. But character is different. Character endures when gold turns to dust, when power slips away, when time erases worldly glory. Virtue, the Stoics taught, is the only possession that cannot be stolen, devalued, or destroyed. Justice, wisdom, courage, and temperance. These qualities remain unshakable, regardless of external circumstance. They define who you are in the deepest sense, long after fortune has played its games. Seneca warned his students not to be deceived by the appearance of success. A man draped in riches may appear powerful, but if his character is weak, if greed consumes him, if arrogance blinds him, if fear rules him, then he is poorer than the beggar who walks with dignity. Fortune gave him wealth, but without virtue, fortune will just as easily take it away, and when it does, he will crumble, for he never built on solid ground. Marcus Aurelius, though emperor of Rome, reminded himself daily in his meditations that he was just a man, subject to the same mortality as his subjects. He wrote that death levels all men, the wealthy and the poor, the powerful and the forgotten. What remains after death is not your estate, nor your titles, nor the applause you once enjoyed. What remains is your character, the choices you made, the integrity you lived by, the legacy of how you treated others. This truth is not confined to history. In our own world, countless examples prove it daily. Celebrities rise to fame, only to fall into scandal. Fortune makers accumulate billions, only to lose peace of mind, health, or family. Yet there are also those who, with modest means, live lives remembered for their honor, kindness, and courage. The difference is not in their fortune, it is in their character. The Stoics urge us to train our focus not on what fortune gives, but on who we become in the process. Money can make life more comfortable. Applause can make us feel appreciated. Titles can give us influence. But none of these guarantee true success. Success, to the Stoic, is measured in virtue. For virtue is not subject to chance. It depends only on our choices, our discipline, our will. When storms of life come, and they always do, it is not wealth that steadies the ship, but character. When applause fades, it is not titles that sustain you, but integrity. And when the end of life draws near, it is not fortune that comforts the soul, but the knowledge that you lived justly, wisely, and courageously. Fortune is temporary. Character is permanent. To anchor your life in the first is to build on sand. To anchor your life in the second is to build on stone. The Stoics remind us that while we cannot control the flow of fortune, we can always cultivate virtue. And in that virtue lies the only form of success that time itself cannot erase. Use wealth, without being owned by it. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, lived surrounded by luxury. Yet he often reminded himself, and others, that the wise man must always be the master of wealth, never its slave. This distinction lies at the heart of the Stoic path to success. Wealth itself is not evil, nor is it a burden. It is neutral, a tool that can serve noble purposes in the hands of the disciplined, or become a chain that enslaves the undisciplined. The danger arises not from gold or possessions themselves, but from the way we cling to them, fear losing them, or make them the measure of our worth. To the Stoics, wealth is like fire. It can warm, protect, and sustain life, but when left unchecked, it burns, consumes, and destroys. A man may enjoy riches, but if his happiness depends on them, then his freedom is already lost. He lives not as a master of wealth, but as its prisoner, always afraid of loss, always chasing more, always restless. Seneca, despite his immense fortune, practiced simplicity as an exercise of freedom. He would live on meager meals, wear plain clothing, and remind himself that he could survive with little. In doing so, he proved that while he possessed wealth, wealth did not possess him. Marcus Aurelius, though emperor of the most powerful empire in the world, echoed the same truth. Surrounded by treasures, armies, and unimaginable privilege, he wrote in his private meditations that the soul must not depend on luxury, for luxury is fragile and fleeting. He urged himself to stay humble, to live simply, and to remember that fortune's gifts are temporary. To him, wealth was useful only if it served virtue, if it allowed one to practice justice, generosity, and wisdom. Anything beyond this was excess that weakened the soul. In today's world, the lesson is more urgent than ever. Modern society celebrates consumerism, encouraging people to define themselves by what they own. Houses, cars, brands, status symbols. But the Stoics would warn, if you cannot be content without these things, you will never truly be free. The newest possession quickly becomes old, the joy of ownership fades, and the chase begins again. It is a cycle of slavery disguised as success. The Stoic path offers a different vision. Wealth should be held lightly, used wisely, and never worshipped. A wise person may enjoy fine meals and comfortable homes, but they must also be content with bread, water, and modest shelter. The ability to step into both conditions, abundance and simplicity, without fear or resentment, is the mark of true freedom. For when wealth no longer controls your happiness, you are richer than any king. Seneca taught that true fortune lies not in what you own, but in your ability to live without fear of loss. Wealth that can be taken away is not real wealth. It is a loan from fortune. But the man who governs his desires, who uses money as a servant and not as a master, carries within him a treasure that fortune cannot touch. Thus, the Stoics challenge us. Do not reject wealth, but do not surrender to it either. Let wealth serve you, but never allow it to enslave you. For the moment you can walk away from riches without losing your peace, you have achieved the highest form of success, the mastery of self. Resilience is the real currency markets rise and markets fall. Businesses are built and businesses collapse. Fortunes appear overnight and vanish just as quickly. This is the rhythm of the external world, a rhythm no man can fully control. Yet the Stoics remind us that true wealth does not lie in the temporary gains of fortune, but in the inner power to endure, adapt, and rise again. That power has a name: resilience. Resilience is the real currency of life. It cannot be stolen by thieves, diminished by inflation, or lost in a single bad investment. It is forged within through struggle, patience, and the discipline of mind. Where the weak crumble under pressure, the resilient find a way forward. Where others see only an ending, the resilient discover the seeds of renewal. This is why the Stoic thrives, not because fortune always favors him, but because even when fortune abandons him, he cannot be broken. Epictetus, born into slavery, stripped of freedom, and tested by hardship, became one of history's great teachers, not because his circumstances were easy, but because his spirit was unshakable. He taught that we cannot control events, but we can always control our response. Resilience, then, is not waiting for an easier path. It is learning to walk firmly on difficult ground. Marcus Aurelius, facing war, plague, and betrayal during his reign, wrote in his meditations not of despair, but of strength. He reminded himself that misfortune is not a reason to collapse, but an opportunity to live with courage. To him, resilience was the proof of a soul aligned with nature, accepting what comes, yet never surrendering to despair. Modern life is no different. Companies fail, economies falter, relationships break, health weakens. Yet history honors not those who never faced adversity, but those who endured it with dignity and returned stronger. The resilient do not cling to what is lost, they focus on what can still be built. Resilience is not blind optimism. It does not deny pain or hardship. Instead, it confronts reality with unshakable calm. It asks, what can I do now? What is within my power? And it acts with clarity, even when the path is uncertain. This discipline turns disaster into education, failure into training, and suffering into wisdom. For the Stoics, wealth without resilience is fragile. A man with riches but no resilience will collapse when tested, for his strength lies only in what fortune gave him. But a man with resilience, even if stripped of everything, will eventually rise again, for his strength lies in what fortune cannot take. Thus, resilience is the currency that never devalues, the wealth that grows through use. To cultivate it is to secure a fortune no storm can wash away. The Stoic does not ask for an easy life. He asks only for the resilience to meet life as it comes. And with that, he possesses the truest wealth of all. Build trust through integrity. True success, the Stoics remind us, cannot stand without integrity. It is not enough to build wealth, rise in influence, or gain recognition if such gains are achieved at the cost of honesty, fairness, and dignity. Wealth without virtue is not a blessing, it is ruin in disguise. For what appears to be strength on the outside will eventually collapse when its foundation is built on deceit. Seneca often wrote that character, not riches, is the true measure of a man. A fortune gathered through dishonesty or exploitation is like a grand palace built on rotting wood, impressive for a moment, but destined to crumble. But success grounded in fairness, in honoring one's word, in treating others with dignity, this success endures because it is built upon trust. Trust is a form of wealth more valuable than gold. Money can buy influence, but only integrity earns loyalty. Power can command obedience, but only fairness inspires respect. The Stoic path to success understands that every choice leaves an imprint, and that the smallest dishonest act can erode what years of effort have built. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly to live in such a way that, if anyone could see into your soul, they would find it honest, pure, and free of deceit. To him, the true emperor was not the one who ruled armies, but the one who ruled himself with justice and truth. In business, in leadership, and in personal life, the same principle applies. A man who betrays trust for quick profit may gain wealth in the short term, but he loses something greater, his credibility. And once credibility is gone, rebuilding it is harder than amassing gold. On the other hand, a man who keeps his word, who acts fairly even when no one is watching, creates a legacy that outlives him. His wealth is not only in coins, but in the faith others place in him. History honors those who led with integrity more than those who ruled with greed. Leaders who built empires with cruelty are remembered with fear, but those who led with fairness are remembered with respect. The Stoics would say that wealth is empty if people cannot trust you, for what good is gold if your name is spoken with suspicion? In the modern world, the lesson remains unchanged. A business deal made through deception, a friendship betrayed by lies, or a career advanced through manipulation may seem like success, but it is hollow. For when exposure comes, as it always does, what was built collapses, leaving behind shame and regret. Yet a life built on integrity cannot be shaken. Even if fortune turns against such a person, their honor remains intact, and with it, the trust of others. Integrity, then, is the invisible currency that sustains true success. It multiplies every effort, strengthens every relationship, and protects wealth from corruption. To the Stoic, it is better to lose money and keep one's virtue than to gain fortune and lose one's soul. For wealth fades, but the reputation of integrity outlives fortune itself. Trust is the bridge between the self and the world. Without it, no success can last. With it, even modest wealth becomes abundant because it is anchored in virtue. Thus, the Stoics remind us, if you wish for success that endures, build it upon the rock of integrity. Everything else is ruin in disguise. Define success internally, not externally. To the Stoics, success was never measured by applause, trophies, or the fleeting approval of the crowd. Success was an inner condition, a life aligned with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. A man who acted with virtue was already successful, whether the world crowned him with praise or mocked him with scorn. Public opinion, they taught, is like the wind, shifting, unpredictable, and impossible to control. To anchor your worth in the voices of others is to build your life on sand. Epictetus reminded his students that the opinions of others belong to them, not to us. If you do what is just, wise, and honorable, then you have fulfilled your highest purpose, even if no one claps. Conversely, if you betray your principles for the sake of applause, then your success is hollow, for you have traded integrity for vanity. True victory is mastery of the self, not the admiration of the crowd. Marcus Aurelius, though emperor of Rome, constantly warned himself against chasing the approval of the masses. In his meditations, he wrote that the same crowd who cheers today will mock tomorrow, and eventually they too will die and be forgotten. What endures is not their opinion, but your own character. To him, the only real measure of success was whether he had lived in harmony with nature and virtue. If he had acted justly, if he had ruled with wisdom, then he was successful, regardless of how history might judge him. This is a lesson deeply relevant today. In a world obsessed with likes, followers, awards, and recognition, it is easy to confuse external noise with inner worth. People measure their success by numbers, by comparisons, by how loudly others applaud. Yet the Stoics would ask, what happens when the applause fades? What happens when the world overlooks you, or worse, condemns you? If your definition of success depends on them, then your peace will always be fragile. The Stoic path offers a sturdier foundation. Success is defined internally by how faithfully you live according to virtue. Did you act with fairness, even when it cost you? Did you choose courage over fear? Did you pursue wisdom rather than vanity? Did you restrain your desires with temperance? If the answer is yes, then you have succeeded, even if no one noticed. Seneca put it simply, a good character, once established, cannot be hidden. It will always shine through. The applause of others may amplify it, but it does not create it. Integrity is success in itself. When you define your worth internally, external gains become secondary. Wealth, fame, recognition. These may come, and if they do, you can use them well. But if they do not, your success remains intact because it was never dependent on them. The Stoics remind us that a quiet, honest life lived with virtue may be more successful than the most celebrated career built on compromise. For in the end, the judgment of others dies with them. But your own soul, your conscience, your alignment with virtue, stays with you until your final breath. That is the true measure of success. The greatest fortune is self-mastery. Wealth may rise and vanish. Fortunes may be built and destroyed, but there is one treasure that remains untouchable by thieves, untouched by markets, and unshaken by time: self-mastery. To the Stoics, this was the highest form of wealth. A man who governs himself, his fears, his impulses, his desires, possesses a fortune greater than gold, because no external power can take it from him. Epictetus, who was born a slave, knew this truth better than most. His chains bound his body, but never his mind. He taught that freedom and wealth come not from possessions, but from mastery over one's inner world. A man enslaved by anger, lust, greed, or fear may appear powerful, but in truth, he is weaker than the poorest beggar who rules his own passions. For what use is gold if one is owned by desire? What use is authority if one is ruled by fear? The Stoics declared, "He who conquers himself is richer than he who conquers kingdoms." Seneca, living amidst wealth and power, reminded his readers that possessions often reveal the lack of mastery within. The man who endlessly chases luxury has not gained control, but lost it. His desire owns him. True wealth, Seneca argued, lies in reducing desires, in being content with little, and in standing firm against the temptations of excess. To him, the richest man is not the one with the most possessions, but the one with the least need for them. Marcus Aurelius, burdened with the weight of empire, turned inward to remind himself that the soul must remain sovereign. Though he ruled millions, he warned that the hardest empire to govern was the self. Without discipline, he wrote, you become a servant to impulses, tossed about like a ship in a storm. But with self-mastery, you stand unshaken, regardless of fortune's waves. In our own time, this wisdom rings even louder. People chase wealth, status, and recognition, believing these will bring control over life. Yet many who acquire them remain restless, anxious, and enslaved by their own desires. Markets crash, careers end, health declines, and with them, their fragile sense of worth collapses. The man without self-mastery is always vulnerable, for his happiness depends on what he cannot control. But the man who has mastered himself carries his fortune within. He cannot be bribed by temptation, broken by fear, or enslaved by desire. His peace is not tied to wealth, for he can endure poverty with dignity. His joy is not tied to applause, for he can live unnoticed without bitterness. His strength is not tied to control over others, for he has already conquered the hardest realm, his own mind. The Stoics remind us that this inner sovereignty is the ultimate treasure. Riches can be seized, titles revoked, applause silenced, but no force on earth can strip away the discipline of a soul that governs itself. This is why self-mastery is the greatest fortune. It is unstealable, unshakable, and eternal. Wisdom is the ultimate investment. Unlike gold, land, or any ledger entry, wisdom is a kind of wealth that cannot be seized, inflated away, or erased by the market. Empires crumble, currencies fail, and fortunes vanish, but insight endured by the soul remains. The Stoics treated philosophy not as an abstract luxury, but as a practical treasury, a disciplined habit that trains perception, steadies desire, and clarifies action. To invest in wisdom, they said, is to purchase a lifelong dividend of clearer choices, steadier emotion, and a mind that sees what truly matters. Think of wisdom as a capital that compounds. A single act of reflection, an honest journal entry, a sober assessment of a mistake, a refusal to follow panic, yields insight. That insight shapes the next decision, and that decision yields further understanding. Over time, the returns are exponential. Better decisions, fewer wasted energies, more meaningful investments of time and resources. Whereas a financial windfall can breed new anxieties and dependencies, wisdom reduces waste and magnifies the value of what already exists. It teaches you how to use money, influence, and health rather than be used by them. The lives of the Stoics themselves illustrate the point. Epictetus, born a slave, taught freedom of the mind. His lack of external freedom made every internal lesson more valuable. Seneca, wealthy and entangled in Roman politics, still valued the inner discipline that allowed him to live simply amid abundance. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of a vast realm, returned nightly to private meditations that trained him to govern himself first. Their example shows that wisdom is not the absence of difficulty, but the skillful engagement with it. Hardship becomes a tutor, fortune, a test. Every moment becomes an opportunity to learn how to live well. Wisdom is also the guardian of all other investments. It tempers risk with prudence, ambition with justice, and gain with humility. Without it, the boldest venture becomes folly. With it, the humblest effort becomes durable. The wise investor in life asks different questions. Not how fast can I get rich, but what kind of life does this decision build? Not, will this bring me admiration, but will this preserve my integrity and strengthen my character? Those questions change the architecture of choices. Long-term value replaces short-term thrill, Meaning replaces mere accumulation. Practically speaking, investing in wisdom looks like daily disciplines, reading slowly and vulnerably, journaling honestly about failures and causes, seeking teachers and disagreements that refine rather than flatter, and practicing the small moral acts that make virtue habitual. It means pausing before reaction, learning from setbacks rather than denying them, and cultivating the patience to prefer depth over speed. These habits are not glamorous, but they produce a steadiness that money cannot buy. The return on this investment is visible in two main ways. First, decision quality improves. The person who has cultivated wisdom makes fewer reckless bets on fleeting trends and more steady commitments to things that matter: relationships, character, purposeful work. Second, inner freedom grows. Wisdom shrinks the realm of what can disturb you because it reveals which things are within your control and which are not. When external losses occur, the wise do not collapse. They recalibrate. Their distress, if any, is proportionate and instructive, not paralyzing. Finally, wisdom multiplies beyond the individual. A single wise person influences families, workplaces, and communities. Decisions informed by prudence and justice create institutions that last. Conversations guided by clarity preserve trust. Teaching what you've learned, by example and by counsel, turns private riches into public good. This is why the Stoics prize philosophy not merely for self-preservation, but for service. Wisdom equips you to give better advice, steward resources better, and leave a legacy that benefits others long after you're gone. Master desire, master freedom. The Stoics taught that freedom is not found in gaining everything you want, but in mastering your desires. A man who chases every impulse becomes a slave, not to others, but to his own cravings. Wealth, power, and applause may appear to grant freedom, but if you depend on them to feel whole, you have simply traded one form of bondage for another. True freedom, they insisted, begins within, when the soul no longer bows to uncontrolled wants. Epictetus reminded his students that no tyrant can enslave the person who governs his own mind. You may be deprived of money, status, or even liberty, but as long as your judgment and your principles remain intact, you are still free. Conversely, if you cannot resist temptation, if you compromise your virtue to satisfy your appetites, then no palace can make you free. It only disguises your captivity. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the simplest pleasures, a just act, a grateful heart, a clear conscience, are enough for the wise. He did not scorn wealth or honor, but he refused to let them dictate his peace. By practicing temperance and self-discipline, he ensured that even as emperor, he was not ruled by the throne. This is the Stoic paradox. By restraining your desires, you enlarge your freedom. By mastering yourself, you gain power no external fortune can bestow. In today's world, where advertising magnifies every craving and social media fuels endless comparison, the ability to master desire is more urgent than ever. If you are not vigilant, you will measure your life by what you acquire, how many people approve, or what status symbols you display. But the Stoics ask, are you free or are you merely decorated? Is your soul at peace, or is it still hungry for the next thing? Mastering desire does not mean rejecting life's gifts. It means enjoying them without clinging, using them without being used by them. It means you can lose money, opportunities, or applause without losing yourself. When your happiness no longer depends on external gain, integrity becomes easier because you are no longer tempted to betray your principles for short-term rewards. And defining success internally becomes natural because your worth is no longer on the auction block of public opinion. Thus, the Stoics linked self-mastery with both integrity and inner success. To them, the man who governs his desires can live simply or richly, obscurely or famously, yet always with dignity. This is the freedom that cannot be bought or stolen. It is not the freedom of owning much, but the freedom of needing little. Freedom lies in self-mastery. At the heart of every Stoic teaching, whether about obstacles, fortune, or wealth, is the pursuit of inner freedom. This freedom is not granted by governments, riches, or applause. It is earned by mastering yourself. Epictetus, born a slave, taught this most powerfully. Though his body was owned by another, his mind was his own. He argued that no tyrant can truly enslave the person who governs his desires, guards his reason, and lives by virtue. In this, he was freer than many kings, for his happiness was beyond their reach. To the Stoics, self-mastery is the ultimate safeguard against life's uncertainties. Obstacles may come, but if you govern your reactions, they cannot destroy you. They become fuel for growth. Fortune may rise and fall, but if you anchor your worth in virtue, it cannot unseat your peace. Wealth may flow into your hands or slip away, but if you have learned to live simply and without fear of loss, it can never own you. The person who masters himself walks through life unshaken, not because life is easy, but because his freedom no longer depends on it being so. In our modern age, this lesson is more urgent than ever. People chase security through possessions, status, and control, yet remain restless and anxious because they have not mastered themselves. The Stoics offer a different vision. Cultivate discipline, temper your desires, strengthen your reason, and build your life on virtue rather than circumstance. Then, no matter what happens, wealth or poverty, praise or blame, comfort or hardship, you will be free. For freedom is not a gift from the world, it is a victory of the soul. True freedom also reshapes how you experience success. When you have mastered yourself, ambition no longer feels like a hunger, but like a purpose. You can pursue great projects without being ruled by the fear of failure or the intoxication of praise. Wins and losses become information, not identity. This steadiness allows you to act with greater clarity, to take bold steps without desperation, and to release outcomes without regret. In this way, self-mastery does not make you passive, it makes you formidable, because nothing external can unbalance the core of who you are. Self-mastery also transforms relationships. The person who governs his emotions listens more than he reacts, forgives more than he resents, and leads by example rather than control. This creates trust, and trust creates influence far greater than force ever could. Epictetus taught that you cannot command others until you have first commanded yourself. By mastering anger, envy, and pride, you become a steady presence in a turbulent world, someone whose character invites respect without demanding it. This is a kind of quiet power that outlasts titles or wealth. Finally, self-mastery is the seedbed of joy. The Stoics were not grim ascetics. They believed that freedom from uncontrolled desire opens the door to deeper gratitude. When you need less, you appreciate more. When you stop clinging to outcomes, you can delight in effort. When you stop fearing loss, every moment becomes richer because it is no longer overshadowed by anxiety. This is why Marcus Aurelius could write, even under immense pressure, about the beauty of ordinary things, the sunrise, honest work, a shared meal. The person who has mastered himself has not withdrawn from life. He has learned how to live it fully. In the end, the Stoic path to wealth and success is not about rejecting ambition, nor is it about abandoning virtue. It is about bringing the two into harmony. The world tells us to choose, either pursue greatness in the eyes of others, or live a quiet, virtuous life. But the Stoics teach us something far deeper. Ambition without virtue is corruption, and virtue without ambition may remain untested. True success lies in uniting the two, in pursuing achievement while remaining anchored in wisdom, discipline, and character. Wealth is fleeting. Gold passes from hand to hand. Fortunes rise and fall with the tides of chance, and possessions that once seemed permanent decay with time. Yet wisdom endures. The man who has cultivated insight, who has trained his desires, who has mastered his impulses, carries within him a treasure that no storm can wash away. He may lose coins, but he will never lose clarity. He may lose applause, but he will never lose integrity. Such wealth grounded in virtue cannot be stolen, even by fate itself. Success, too, can fade. Titles are revoked, recognition dies with memory, applause fades as quickly as it rises. But character remains. Long after wealth has scattered, long after the world forgets your name, what remains is how you lived, whether you were just, whether you were courageous, whether you carried yourself with dignity. The Stoics remind us that the man of character is remembered not for what he owned, but for who he was. His virtue is his true monument, more enduring than stone or gold. When you anchor your pursuit of achievement in Stoic principles, discipline, resilience, and integrity, you gain more than external success. You create stability within. Discipline keeps you steady when desire tempts you astray. Resilience strengthens you when fortune tests you with loss. Integrity protects you when power and wealth threaten to corrupt. With these virtues as your foundation, you cannot be destroyed, even if everything external is taken from you. For your fortune is not outside. It lives within your soul. The Stoics never rejected wealth. They welcomed it as a tool, but they warned against making it a master. To them, the truest fortune was self-mastery. The truest success was virtue, and the truest wealth was the ability to live freely, unshaken by chance. In a world where men chase gold and applause, this is the wisdom that still speaks across centuries. The Stoics remind us that worldly riches are temporary, but inner riches are eternal. To pursue success without virtue is to grasp at shadows. To pursue virtue without ambition is to bury your light. But to unite the two, to live with both excellence and integrity, is to hold a fortune no thief, no misfortune, and no death can take away. That is the only success that truly lasts. To live this way is not merely to follow a philosophy, it is to forge a legacy. A man who unites ambition with virtue becomes a living testament to what is possible when power serves principle. His achievements do not end with him. They ripple outward into families, communities, and generations. Wealth built on virtue funds schools, heals the sick, and uplifts the poor. Influence rooted in integrity shapes laws, reforms institutions, and inspires others to act with justice. This is how the Stoic ideal turns private excellence into public good, by making every ambition a vehicle for service rather than a monument to ego. And yet, the Stoics remind us that even this legacy is not ours to control. What matters is not how history remembers you, but how you lived in the moments that were yours. A life of virtue is its own reward, whether or not it is celebrated, for it gives you peace in the present and courage in the face of loss. When ambition and virtue move together, success becomes not an endpoint, but a way of being, a steady flame that neither fortune nor misfortune can extinguish. In the end, this is the only wealth that endures: a soul unbroken, a character unwavering, and a life lived in harmony with the highest within you.